Out of the Park Baseball puts you in charge of your favorite Major League Baseball franchise as you guide it through unlimited seasons of championship chasing. Trade players, sign free agents, draft prospects, set lineups and pitching assignments, call the shots from the dugout, and much more. If GMs and managers can do it in real life, you can do it in Out of the Park Baseball. If you're unfamiliar with the game, please see our video that covers the basics. Now that you've watched our introductory tutorial, let's talk about calling the shots from the dugout, which is one of the most exciting parts of the game. Sure, you can set strategies and let your AI manager take care of that as you sim through the season, but it can be fun to experience the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat as you make those crucial hot seat decisions. From anywhere in the game, you can click the play menu to advance to game time. Notice that you have plenty of options here if you want to move through the season more quickly. The real-time simulation feature lets you watch all the games scheduled for the day unfold with a ticker that lets you know what's happening. That's a fun option to use late in the season when playoff spots are on the line and you want to see who clinches and who's denied. Now let's show you how to call the shots from the dugout during a game. Before you enter the action, you'll want to check out your options. The game will remember anything you change here for next time, so you don't have to do it all again. The first set of options dictate who's in control of your team. If you'd rather not handle certain things, you can turn them over to the AI. Then you have your general game options, starting with whether or not to use the DH, which is grayed out if you're playing in a National League stadium during the interleague era. You can also decide whether or not you should have to warm up your relievers before bringing them in, which adds realism but requires you to think ahead, like a real-world manager. And if you're in commissioner mode, you can change the stadium. The last two items depend on your personal preference for what you want to see on the field. Here's what playing out a game looks like with player photos displayed on the field and the field headers shown. And here's what it looks like without those things. You can also change various options in the play-by-play, starting with the game sound. Not only can you disable the roar of the crowd, the crack of the bat, and so forth, but you can give our experimental text-to-speech option a try. Moving on, you can decide whether you want to see the ball when it's hit in either 2D or 3D view. And there are a few options that dictate the box that contains the play-by-play text, including its size, the font size, the amount of detail you see, and the speed at which it's displayed. Delay mode determines how the play-by-play appears. Per character means it flows in a ticker tape style, which adds to the suspense as you read what happens, while per line means each line instantly appears in its entirety. Per character is the default for delay mode. There's a microphone that appears in the play-by-play box to add to that radio broadcast feel, but you can turn it off if you want. Finally, if you choose to simulate the world in the background, other teams play their games at their scheduled times as in real life. So if you're in a late season pennant chase, you can do a little scoreboard watching. Or you can freeze the rest of the world while you're playing your game, which comes in handy if you want to save the scoreboard watching for later, or if you want to manage teams in more than one game. Before you start the game, you can also take a look at both teams' stats as well as view your lineup and starting pitcher in case you want to make any last-minute changes. When you're ready, click Start Game to begin the action. The broadcast view is where most people play out games, but as with so many other things in Out of the Park Baseball, we offer many options so you can choose the one that works best for you. We'll start here. The left side features some basic information, the lineup of the team at bat as well as the pitcher and hitter. In the middle of the screen, we have a look at the stadium with the current defensive alignment. Notice that if you hover over a player's name, you get a handy pop-up with some important information. At the bottom, you'll find the controls. They're all pretty self-explanatory, but you might be wondering about a couple of them. Send forced means the runners on base will run no matter what happens at the plate. That's a good way to force a runner to try to steal a base. If you put on the steal sign a couple of times and he puts on the brakes, but you really want him to try for a steal. In both a hit and run and hit, whoever's on base starts running as soon as the pitcher throws, but in a hit and run, the batter does whatever he can do to try to hit the ball, while in a run and hit, he has the option of whether or not to swing. The upside to either strategy is that the runner will be able to easily take an extra base or likely avoid a force out, but the downside is that they're more likely to be doubled off, with a chance they could be thrown out stealing if the batter misses the ball or decides not to swing in the case of a run and hit. The 2 squeeze options are only available with a runner on third. If you put on a squeeze bunt, the runner on third will run for home as soon as the ball is pitched, while a safety squeeze requires him to wait for the batter to bunt. The safety squeeze helps prevent the runner from being doubled off if the bunt attempt is popped in the air. We're up to bat first, so we only have the relevant options available for the first hitter of an inning. Since the game has just started, let's swing away. You can either click it or press the number 1 on your keyboard. The play-by-play displays the result of the at-bat. Out of the Park Baseball features tens of thousands of lines of text, so there's a wide variety of descriptions that cover all kinds of situations. You might even come across a few rarities like the old hidden ball trick. When the at-bat ends, click your mouse anywhere on the screen or press any key to continue. If you do that too soon, there's an option to replay the last play-by-play text. Also notice in the bottom right of the screen you can switch to pitch-by-pitch mode anytime. That comes in handy during key situations, such as when an opportunity to steal a base comes up. At the bottom of the screen, there are options to play ahead in the game if you want. Until RISP means the game will move ahead until there's at least 1 runner on second or third base, or until the half inning ends. If you don't have a lot of time, that's a great way to skip to the important parts of the game. When the other team comes to bat, you have all the options available to a big league manager. As with batting, most of them are self-explanatory, but we'll note a couple that you might be wondering about. Pitch around asks the pitcher to try to hit the edges of the strike zone. It's a useful strategy when you want to lessen the chance of a batter getting a hit and would be okay with walking him. Pitch to contact is a strategy that lessens the number of pitches thrown by trying to induce the batter to swing. The downside, of course, is that he's much more likely to get a hit. But if you have excellent fielders and a large lead, it's a good way to suppress a pitch count. And visit mound is likely to result in the kind of comment most managers hear. You can also position your fielders in spots other than the usual ones depending on the situation. Bring your infield and outfield in can stop a runner on third from scoring with less than 2 outs. But there's also a greater chance the batter will get a hit. Bringing in your third and or first baseman is useful for dealing with likely bunts and guarding the lines, lessen the chance of a ground ball going down the line and into the corner for a double or a triple. But it increases the likelihood of a base hit if the ball is hit where those fielders usually play. You can also shift the infield left or right, a practice that has become increasingly popular with some managers in recent years. You'll want to play your outfielders deep if you're trying to take away extra base hits. The rest of the screen displays a variety of information, including each team's stats for the game and their available pinch hitters and relievers. The pitch sequence box is a nice representation of those pitch-by-pitch graphics you often see during baseball games. Notice also that you can click any of the boxes on this screen and move them around, as well as resize them. Click Configure Screen for several options for resizing the boxes and changing the spots on the screen if you want to enter exact X and Y coordinates. If you have a large monitor, these options allow you to fill your entire screen with all kinds of extra information that immerses you even deeper into the action. Before we move on to the other tabs at the top of the screen, let's check out of the Park's 3D stadiums, which you can select by clicking the drop-down at the top of the ballpark. 3D mode gives you a nice view of one of the 30 real Major League Baseball stadiums in the game, along with 3D ball flight, so you can tell ground balls from fly balls. A 3D stadium can have as many viewing options as you want. You set them up in the ballpark editor. Also, you can configure the screen in 3D mode just like in broadcast view. You probably noticed the webcast view option too. That gives you a simplified view of the field with 2D ball animation, assuming you have that turned on. Now about those tabs at the top. Network gives you a look at the other action currently happening around your league, assuming you didn't pause the rest of the world during your game. Then we have the substitution screen, where you can make your pitching, hitting, and running changes. Notice the bullpen area, which shows who you have warming up, assuming you have that rule enabled. You can also revisit the options area during the game if you want to enable or disable anything, and you can check out how the box score and the game log look so far. Let's finish the game so you can see the end result. The first thing you'll see is a box score, just like the ones you find online and used to read in those antiquated things called newspapers. When you're done with that, you can view the game log to see a pitch-by-pitch account of the game. If you want, you can also write your own news article about the game with the option to include it in the game's news system. That's a fun option for those budding sports journalists out there. Finally, you can save the replay of the game if you want to revisit it later. That's a nice option to have for playoff games, no-hitters, perfect games, and other games you want to preserve for posterity. And that's it for playing through a game of Out of the Park Baseball. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in our next tutorial.